In an article entitled MAGA Pastor Says 200 Bibles Set Ablaze Outside His Church on Easter Morning, far-right pastor Greg Locke gets a taste of his own medicine as a trailer full of Bibles is set ablaze in front of the Global Vision Church in Nashville, Tennessee. Locke has previously pulled similar stunts of his own by holding book burnings focused on Harry Potter and Twilight series due to their supposed demonic teachings. He also notably destroyed a Barbie dream house with a baseball bat that had a Bible taped to it in response to the 2023 Barbie hit movie, which challenged traditional roles of patriarchy and endorsed various forms of equality pertaining to sex and gender. This vehement LGBTQ opponent frequently violates his church's nonprofit status by using his sermons to make political endorsements of Donald Trump, while characterizing President Joe Biden and his supporters as demon-possessed, crack-smoking leftists. There are so many things wrong with this picture, and I wish there were enough time to cover all of it. We're certainly going to try. But this story is from the Daily Beast by A.J. McDougall on March 31st, 2024. And I want to kick it over to our panels. Eli, I want to start with you first.
Sir.
You know, this is a guy who has been accused of, well, not accused of, I mean, openly performed ridiculous stunts in front of his congregation, out in public, smashing Barbie dream houses, burning his own books. But is this a potential, or is this actual book burning in front of his church just another potential stunt by Locke, or has he drawn negative attention due to his antics as he has in the past, and maybe somebody's getting even with him? What do you think about that?
So I'll say, is it outside the realm of possibility that he is the target of violence? Not at all. That's absolutely, and that probably is the case. But it kind of seems like he did it. You know what I mean? So like, if you look at the way that he talks about this footage, so in the article, it says that he has not yet seen the footage at the time that he describes it in the following ways. He talks about exactly what time the vehicle was parked. He talks about how the perpetrator left the hazard lights on. He says that's the most polite criminal. And that is a very interesting detail because it's not common for people who are angry to give credit where it's due. And I think what the case is that he can't demonize himself. I think he's the person in the video and he can't demonize himself. He has to say something good about himself. So he's like, oh, look how polite I am. Even when I'm criming, I'm just so polite. I'm the most fucking polite you've ever seen in your life. And it's like, and this is like a known thing that happens when people are trying to shift blame from themselves. It is common. People are unable to just fully demonize themselves most of the time. So even when you're trying to, in this case, say like, no, that wasn't me that did that, which he does. He's not defending himself, but he's trying to obfuscate himself. And even in that process, he can't fully be like, well, he's all bad, because he knows it's him. And he's got to be like, there's some good in there. Yeah,
that makes sense. I really like to see how this plays out. If it is in fact uncovered that he did do it, maybe he's already setting himself up to look like a good guy in a kind of a weird way. I wanted to kind of move to Infidel and see what you thought about that. Do you think that Locke could be behind these stunts in order to draw attention to himself? I mean, is he just an attention-grabbing type of guy, or is he really, concerned about this movement that he's so against?
I've got to say that Greg Locke believes in one thing and one thing only, and that's Greg Locke. With his antics that he has done in the past, would be difficult for me to put this past him. Does that mean he did it? No, but it did strike me as rather odd when he made the comment about wanting to start passing out the scorched Bible verses, the Bible pages. I found that to be, this concept of unity, of opposition, of, look at what they're doing to us, because he's trying to take these Bibles who technically aren't his. It's not like they went and took his Bibles and burned his property, and he's wanting to pass these out as some kind of memento or trophy of survival. It just seems very suspicious to me. Now, you had mentioned earlier his Bible taped around the baseball bat with the Barbie house, and anyone who will do these types of antics and try to pass this off as something serious. Personally, it's something I'm not able to do. I'm not able to take them serious. And honestly, I don't think anyone should. I do agree with the sheriff saying it was a 100% deliberate act. The question is, back to what Eli said, who? And as you mentioned, Jimmy, he has a history of burning books himself. So for me, it just seems like a logical leap to think that, burning books is something the other side would do too. But if it is real and someone did this, obviously that's unacceptable on any level. But it is a reminder that hateful things do breed hateful actions. It's not a justification for our side or the opposition of Greg Locke to do it any more than it is those words of hate that he spews every week, how they come back to haunt us and how they come back to haunt people around him, because words have consequences. So if those words are having consequences to him too, well, perhaps he should consider toning down his rhetoric, because he doesn't believe this. That's what it is. It's rhetoric.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, we've got a case to maybe think or maybe say that he is behind this, and this is kind of just more of the show that he's putting on, or he could be drawing some retaliation. And Scott, if this is indeed a case of retaliation against Locke for his far-fetched, and far-right commentary, political activism, can it be considered a hate crime? I mean, is this so serious that we should be giving it that title?
Well, I mean, it's really tough to say. I mean, both Infidel and Eli, you're bringing up some good points. I mean, I definitely could see Locke doing something like this, right? I mean, having, this martyr complex is definitely kind of it's an ego trip. And so, there's really two, it's the story is either a Greg Locke story or it's an act of violence story. And in this case, it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, he's drawn the ire of many different populations, many different groups within the population. And for example, and these are some of his own words, this one's taken from a video of him on Twitter. He says, "Now I'm going to make you mad for a minute, and I don't really care. Why is it you pull up to a church and it says they operate in faith and you have 50 handicapped parking spots? We ought to start having signs of a wheelchair laying down and someone just walking up. Well, Pastor, I think you're being insensitive. I think you just don't have enough faith is what I think." And so he's saying that disabled people just don't have enough faith. They should just cast aside their wheelchairs and stand up and walk. And I found this other tweet of his from July of last year, and this is like a one-stop shopping spot for violating all these different communities here. He says, "Jesus is the only way to heaven, period. Masks don't work. There's only two genders. Trump won the election. George Floyd is not a hero. Socialism is an evil disease. Epstein didn't kill himself. The tunnels are real." I had to look up that last one, but he's definitely trying. I mean, it's almost like he's intentionally provoking these communities. And so he has a history of being a troublemaker. And so the question then lies, you were asking about, is it a hate crime? Is it a hate crime? If there are people actually responding to this, and I wasn't really sure about that. I looked it up. This is from justice.gov. It says, at the federal level, hate crime laws include crimes committed against on the basis of the victim's perceived or actual race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. Okay, and so the question then is whether or not it's a hate crime depends on if we're assuming that it was committed by somebody else. I wonder if you could do a hate crime against yourself. If anybody could, it would be somebody like him. But but then the question is, are they doing this because of his religious beliefs, or are they doing it just because he's an asshole? I mean, it can go either way.
And I think I'm inclined to align with your last point. I mean, he's not drawing ire from people because he's religious.
Right.
He's drawing ire because he's basically a walking clickbait, isn't he? He's a troll. He is trying to do things for attention and, purposely raise his stock by openly making these outlandish claims. And, you know, I just want to harken back to the fact that a lot of the things he's saying go against the rules that are established in his community, in the 501c3 nonprofit realm, right? So standing at your pulpit and endorsing political opponents, and then why does
it's
it
just
make
another way to be provocative, right? He's provoking the government. He's saying, look what I can do. Don't tell me what to do. I'm running this church.
Yeah. And so these are good points. I could segue into something I know Eli had something to say about, and that is, you know, Locke is telling his congregation all sorts of things. He's taking political stances. They're way far right wing, but they're also unhinged. I mean, even for right wing people, beating up a Barbie doll house is kind of crazy. But Eli, by Locke telling his congregation that they need to not be so lukewarm and passive aggressive, and essentially demanding that they take a more abrasive or forceful stance, is this a call to action by him for people to engage in violence?
A call to violence, I would hesitate to call it that. It's kind of like the Christian not the Christian version, but you could say the buddy Jesus version of call to violence, like like what LOL is to laughing. He really wants him. So what he said was, this is a quote from the article that he had said to his congregation. I'm sorry, I gotta find it here. He's a known, we are under attack type preacher. So what he says is, if you think Christianity is not under attack now more than ever before in the United States of America, you have not been paying attention. You need to get your head out of the sand. Quit being so lukewarm. Quit being so passive aggressive and mamby-pamby and spiritually sissified. So he very much wants to like rally the troops of his congregation, so to speak, and kind of get them behind him. So the next time he makes like a Facebook video or he's on the local news, he can have like 7 to 10 people behind him holding signs that say, God hates whoever. Or that may not be his brand, but he can have like that support behind him. He just wants to rally that support. He is very much a provocateur, as has been said. And he does a lot of these videos where he's like just kind of angry and about whatever's going on politically. He had a video about about when Target changed their bathroom policy to allow customers to use the bathroom of the gender they identify with. There was a BaptistNewsGlobal.com article about him, and it was titled in part, "Here's Why You Shouldn't Listen to Him." This was in August of 2021. Baptist News Global was saying, don't listen to this guy, to Baptists.
Well, it's not uncommon for, I think, members of different congregations or even different sects of Christianity to kind of point the finger at each other, right?
Sure.
I'm not so sure if I'm convinced that he's not making a call to action. I don't know where we draw the line. He is trying to kind of evoke some kind of victimhood with his followers and give them something to identify as victims. And that could spill over and become really ugly. We've seen that in our political sphere, in our own government, January 6th, of course, and in other ways. And, Glenn, I want to ask you made mention of passing out Bible pages. So what would be so bad about him passing out the burned Bible pages? Is this a badge of honor, or is it a reminder of their victimhood to create the solidarity that he would need if things were to escalate?
I think the goal would be anger. Okay. You create that unity, and once you get that unity, then you give it a direction, and that direction rather consistently with, coming from the guy who decided to take a baseball bat with the Bible wrapped around it to a Barbie house. Negativity, violence, these type of things seem to be his way he would want to resolve almost anything. It's more of a condescending, let's go handle this because you're not brave enough, you're not bold enough, you're not Christian enough, you're not whatever you want to put there, you're not enough, but I am, and I'm going to be the example. So I think to him, he sees himself as that hero. that one who's going to lead people, because I don't believe that Locke actually buys most of what he says, but I think that there's that I want to be that guy. I want to be that person. And I think that this is just another way to stay relevant in his eyes, and to get people charged up about a burned Bible. I mean, I guess that's a bonus. So I don't think he's losing his sleep. But one thing I wanted to say that I found odd is that usually those trailers have VIN numbers on them. So I'm surprised that there isn't somebody tracking that trailer a little more seriously than that. And that's a lot more expensive than the Bibles. I was feeling bad about the trailer, not the Bible.
Well, if this is his own actions, I mean, he's an expert at this point. After going through the Twilight and Harry Potter books, he's probably got some skill there to be able to disguise his tracks, right? Or mask his tracks. Scott, I wanted to get your opinion on whether or not, plain and simple, is this violence?
Well, that depends on how you look at it. I mean, we've been talking a lot about Greg Locke and about how, maybe he staged it, but, there's always the possibility that he didn't. We've talked about some outrageous things he's done. He's offended a variety of communities. He's definitely generated ire from the public. And so it definitely, and Infidel touched on this earlier, and that is, if it was violence against Greg Locke or his church or whatever, it's not the way to go. It's not a good way to go. I mean, at least that's my opinion. I can't support that kind of action if it was something that's done against him. And so if that was the case, then I would say, yeah, it's definitely violence. It's putting the public at risk. It's endangering, could be innocent bystanders. Who knows that, a fire could get out of control. It could pass on to like nearby buildings or houses. And so it's fire. It's fire for one thing, and which is Locke is quite familiar with. We've talked about his book burning experience, and maybe if it was him, he felt like he was expert enough that he could keep it under control. But it's hard. It's like right in your face. It's like burning something that's precious to these people, and whether or not we agree with their beliefs, we have to support their right to have that belief. We have to support their right to have those books, and so if you're asking me if it's violence, I say definitely it's violence if it's just coming from outside of the church itself. If he did it himself, then it's just a show. Then it's like a stage magician just having pyrotechnics as part of the background. And so it would depend on how we look at it, or what the police find out, if the police are in fact investigating it.
Yeah, so bringing the police into it, this is a good opportunity for me to ask you a closing question. I'd like to get your closing comments based on the idea that maybe Greg Locke was under attack by somebody. So let's say there are two sides to this controversy: Locke on one hand, and the people who support LGBTQ plus rights, gender equality. Who wins in such a case like this? Who's got the claim to really be angry, and who is really being affected by hate crimes? And then after, Scott, if you could wrap it up quickly, I want to get to
Sure.
Infidel, and then we will move to Eli and close it out.
Well, if it is in fact a show, then I think it's a reflection of Locke realizing that he has to get more and more outrageous to keep stoking the fires, as it were, of that hatred. And so if it is him, then if it's a show, then I think that he realizes that his influence and his side is kind of on the downside here. If it was an act of violence, I think it's not the way to it's not a good way to express that. If somebody from the LGBTQ community, or from any of the numerous other communities that he's offended, I don't think that's the right way to approach it. And I think if it's discovered to be somebody like that, then I think that would be kind of a black eye from their cause.
Infidel, any closing comments?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, this is obviously not the way that anyone needs to resolve their problems. As much as I am happy to see Bibles go away, I think this sends so many wrong messages in so many ways that it's not even funny. It's counterproductive on almost any level. The only win I could see in this would be possibly Greg Locke and his type of rhetoric getting amped up a notch, whether he did it or not. And the truth is that I don't think he really cares if anyone's caught for it, even if he didn't do it, because he would be hoping, okay, what happened the next night on the cameras? Because he's looking for that. That's what an insider looks for. And if he's already incited things enough for other people to start driving the bus, I think he'll be perfectly happy giving him an opportunity to push back at something else.
All right, Eli, last thoughts.
Sure. So, as far as the question, who's losing out? Who's the victim of a hate crime? I mean, I think if this is an act of violence from another group or individual as a result of what he is saying about the group they affiliate with or groups, nobody still wins. Like there's no everybody is losing. Not only does nobody win, everybody is losing here, and this just is not, as it's already been said. I'm kind of just repeating my co-panelists here, but this isn't the right way to do it. Somebody could have gotten hurt, property could have been damaged, but lives could have been lost. And then where would we be? We wouldn't be in any better of a position. Whether it was Greg Locke or not, it was incredibly stupid and irresponsible. And it's definitely not the right way to send whatever your message about religion is. Get on YouTube, make a podcast.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like we're doing. And we are not out threatening people with fire or being violent. And we're having the important discussions here. So if you want to hear more important discussions, click the link below.